Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, November the 8th, 2023. Today I want to do an update on Donald Trump. I know he's always in the news, but at the moment he is in the news because of a civil case against him in the state of New York. He has been accused of overstating the value of his property portfolio, if I understand it correctly. I mean, I don't really know the details. I don't quite know why that is a big deal, but apparently it is a big deal. Yes, and he's been in court and he has been showing a complete disdain for the legal process in this state. And I suppose his supporters take the view that he is a victim of a witch hunt. You know, the Democrat establishment is doing what it can to sabotage his attempts to be re-elected president, because he's already been elected once as president in 2016, and he wants to have another go next year. Yeah, so the Democrat establishment is trying its best to undermine that. Of course, with Donald, you do have to be careful, and attempts to attack him can backfire, and it seems to be the case with him that any news is good news. And one person who seems to be particularly keen to bring Donald down is the New York's Attorney General, Letitia James, who has been going at him with enormous zeal. And I will be looking at her chart and looking at how her chart might link with Donald's chart. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology for today, which is Wednesday, November the 8th, 2023. Okay, so top right, that is his famous mugshot picture. I think that came from Georgia. Was that where was that taken? I forget the details, but he is accused of something in Georgia. I think it was to do with the elections and trying to swing the elections in a particular way. But that sort of demonstrates, at least to Donald's supporters, that across the country, Democrats are out to get him. I'm not going to give a view on the matter. I'm just telling you what some people think. Okay, so as far as what's going on today, this is the positions of the planets. Noon, New York, Wednesday, November the 8th, 2023. I think that the main thing going on, most important thing, is Venus entering Libra. So you can see that Venus is at 0 degrees 20 Libra. So New York time at 9:30 a.m. Venus moved into Libra. If you're in sorry, I got that wrong. New York time 4:30 a.m. So if you're in New York, basically all day Venus is in Libra. If you're in Los Angeles, West Coast, then Venus went into Libra even earlier at 1:30 a.m. If you're in London, Venus goes into Libra at 9:30 a.m. In Paris, 10:30 a.m. So in the Americas, Western Europe, you've pretty much got Venus in Libra for most of the day. If you're in Australia, New Zealand, well, Venus is not going to go into Libra until the evening. So it kind of depends where you are. So this movement of Venus into Libra is a big deal because it represents a very big change. So Venus has been in Virgo, And Venus doesn't really work very well in Virgo. Venus is fallen in Virgo. That's because Venus is exalted in Pisces, and therefore it's fallen in its opposite sign of Virgo. Virgo is a sign that's, it's very into details. It notices things, and Venus doesn't work very well like that because Venus is about relationships. It's about emotional connections. It's not about focusing on small details. Venus in Virgo. As I've said before, Venus in Virgo is sometimes associated with prostitution because it's about concepts of love and sexuality, perhaps, being mixed with sort of money and material details and trade-offs and that kind of thing. So Venus in Virgo not working too well, but then it moves into Libra. So Venus moves from the sign of its fall to its own sign. Venus is comfortable in Libra. Venus is about balance. Venus in Libra gets on with everyone. It's not particularly emotional, Venus in Libra, but it's it knows how to relate. It knows how to make small talk, that kind of thing. Libra is also an air sign. I know we've had this long period where there hasn't been much air in the horoscope, in the sky rather. But now we've got Venus in Libra. Many of us might feel that we can start to breathe. That there's a lot of interaction, gossip. We can be more relaxed. So, in general, it's good news. And when Venus is well placed, that might be a time when we can benefit from Venusian things that we might have put off. So, when Venus isn't well placed, you shouldn't be doing things like buying expensive clothes, buying jewelry, buying things which might look good on the surface, but when you bring them home, when you paid for them, they don't look so good. So making decisions about beauty and aesthetics with Venus in Libra, probably not a good idea. Sorry, with Venus in Virgo, probably not a good idea. But maybe with Venus in Libra, now might be the time. Of course, we always have to be careful about spending money. Don't spend money just because Venus is in Libra. But I think our aesthetic judgment might be better now that Venus is in Libra. So that's good news. Venus in Libra. Other things going on. Looking at the moon. Moon is 22 Virgo at noon in New York. So the moon is making a trine to Uranus. It's quite a gentle trine. It's in earth signs. I don't think it's particularly spectacular. But with moon trine Uranus, we can stir things up, again, in quite a gentle way. It might be a time to spring surprises about how we want to arrange our environment. Surprises about money. So if we want to do something with money or find a new way of making money, moon trine Uranus might provide the stimulation we're looking for. So if we're looking for an inspiration to find new income sources, moon trine Uranus might provide it. So as far as midpoints are concerned, Mars is here. Mars is in Scorpio, and Mars is on the Sun-Uranus midpoint. So there's the Sun and there's Uranus. So the Sun-Uranus midpoint is around 18 Scorpio. So Mars is square the Sun-Uranus midpoint. I think that might be a big deal because you can see that Sun and Uranus are in opposition, are in opposition. So you've got Mars square that opposition. So that could be quite hectic. Sun and Uranus is about drama, can be about violence, particularly with Mars on the Sun-Uranus midpoint. So depending on what we're doing, depending on where we are, we might be attracting dramatic events, perhaps connected with machinery, or things that go bang. If we get into an argument, Venus might be in Libra, but Mars on the, Venus in Libra doesn't really like arguments, so we've got that. So that might help calm things down a bit, but still, Mars on the Sun-Uranus midpoint is about people really sticking to their point of view and, sticking to it, even if it doesn't really do them any good. So we could get a deadlock situation, which could create, deadlock, a standoff, people just refusing to compromise. So watch out for that, and see what you can do if you do come across that kind of situation, a deadlock, people refusing to talk to each other. Don't become part of a problem. See if there's some way in which you can actually resolve the thing and get people to talk to each other. Also, the North Node. There's the North Node. There is Venus, there is Mars. Can you see that the North Node is on the Venus-Mars midpoint? The North Node on the Venus-Mars midpoint could actually be quite good for relationships, because the North Node is not just about karma. That's usually the popular view about the North Node, North and the South Node. It is about karma, but it's also about contacts. If you've looked at any of the material from the German midpoint schools of sort of Witter, Ebertin, and the North Node is described as contacts. So contacts, North Node on a Venus-Mars midpoint. It might be romantic contacts. So if you're looking for a new relationship, then North Node on a Venus-Mars midpoint may be very good. It's about attraction, being able to attract new people in on a physical and perhaps sexual level. So if you're looking for romance, looking for a new relationship, then North Node on the Venus-Mars midpoint maybe quite a useful aspect. At the same time, one other midpoint that I should mention is that the Sun is on the Jupiter-Uranus midpoint. So you can see that the Sun is widely opposition Jupiter, and it's widely opposition Uranus, but it actually is opposition. It's actually exactly opposition the midpoint of the two planets. So this could be fortunate. Reinhold Ebertin, as I've said on several occasions before, described the Jupiter-Uranus pair as the thank the Lord pair. It can be about a sense of sudden relief. Suddenly things go our way. We get a break. And so maybe, if we were perhaps been in a tense situation and we're looking for a breakthrough, something to resolve it, with Sun on a Jupiter-Uranus midpoint, there might be a sudden resolution, and suddenly we might feel very grateful that finally a particular situation, a difficult situation, has been solved. Okay, so one other thing. There's one other thing I've forgotten to mention, and it's the Moon in Virgo is applying to an opposition of Neptune. Moon opposition Neptune may be difficult. The moon in Virgo is all about material details. It's also about sensitivity. Moon in Virgo people who've got moon in Virgo, they are very focused on the material details about their environment, what they're breathing in, pollutants, and they're making sure they're eating the right stuff. And, with Moon and Virgo, all of us perhaps should be thinking about our health and our well-being. And so Neptune can represent pollutants. It's Neptune's a planet that's often connected with petrol, gas, that kind of thing. So we don't want to breathe in stuff that's bad for us. So we do need to really focus on what we're breathing in and what we're eating. Watch out for pollution. If the air feels bad, then it probably is bad, and we should move somewhere else. With Moon opposition Neptune. Moon opposition Neptune can also be about fantasy and deception. So Moon in Virgo likes everything to be straightforward, organized, right there in the right place. But Neptune just creates utter confusion. We just don't quite know where we are, what we're doing. We're trying our hardest to make sure everything's in the right place, but it just doesn't work. And that might make us vulnerable to deception. It might make us vulnerable to making the wrong decision. So I think we have to be a bit careful about that. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do my star sign forecasts for the 12 signs. So here goes. Here are my forecasts for the 12 signs for Wednesday, November the 8th, 2023. Aries, in your social environment, things are starting to change. New people are moving onto the scene, and you need to pay attention to them. And in terms of existing relationships, partners are in a process of change. They are becoming stronger and more confident, and you should consider the possibility that their understanding of the world around you might be better than your own. Taurus, Venus, your ruler, is changing sign from Virgo to Libra. In one sense, you're going to be more serious, and you'll want your human and material environment to be well balanced and well organized. In another sense, you're going to be better placed to take advantage of everything on offer. But don't let bad advice from well-meaning friends spoil things. Gemini, you're in a fairly serious mood, even though Venus is moving into the fun and creativity sector of your solar chart. You don't feel that over-the-top displays of happiness are appropriate because, as far as you're concerned, there are other things to be attended to, possibly of a financial or business nature. The things you say can have a huge impact. Cancer, be careful what you say. The moon, your ruler, is making a stressful aspect to Neptune, and as a result you could get confused and you could get your facts mixed up. So if you're going to make a statement, be very sure that you know what you're talking about. If you're travelling, even over short distances, there's an increased risk that you get lost or take a wrong turning. Leo, it kind of feels that the work has been done, in the sense that you've worked everything out and that you now have a good idea about how best to proceed. Still, there are a few surprises in the works, possibly relating to money. Elsewhere, you're able to communicate with great eloquence, and your charm, your considerable charm, will be very effective. Virgo, as I said yesterday, you're more sensitive than usual, and there will be a lot of material coming your way. By material, I mean, things like particles of dust. You therefore need to protect yourself from outside garbage, bad feelings, and chemical pollutants, and of course, dust. Yet, spiritual significance and a profound sense of meaning could be all around you. And you might find significance in the strangest of places. Libra. Venus is moving into your star sign, which is great news. After all, Venus is your ruling planet. You'll start to feel in your element, and your social skills, which are such an important part of who you are, will become fine-tuned to your environment. But today, there is something that needs to be kept secret. Scorpio. Overall, things are looking good. You're popular and you know how to assert yourself. And you're someone who other people know and trust. This puts you in a position of responsibility. You have to make sure that you meet the expectations that are being placed on you. Those close to you want to keep a low profile. Sagittarius. You continue to focus on your career, or at least on the whole way you move forward with your life. And in many cases, your public profile can be important, but you do have to be careful because there's scope for making mistakes, perhaps on the basis of false information. Family members may be less than helpful. Capricorn. You're trying to move beyond your everyday existence, and perhaps you're contemplating new ways of being. But if you move outside the normal bounds of your material existence, there is scope for getting confused. So, Capricorn, you should never forget the quest for stability and security, which is such an important part of who you are. Aquarius. Keep going. You're on the right track, and sooner or later you'll reach your destination, though it's not a day for trivializing things. What seems laughable could turn out to be deadly serious. Looking at money, and the details aren't very clear, so it's important that you don't make assumptions. Pisces. You're capable of making clear waters muddy, and muddy waters impassable. You don't mean to, but your attempts to solve a problem might be inappropriate. So don't overcomplicate the situation and try to stick to the facts. In your social life, you might notice that one particular person is making their exit. Okay, so I'm now going to turn to the I Ching. So, as always, I ask the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for those watching this video? And I threw 3 coins in the air 6 times, and the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 21, biting through. Biting through is actually a hexagram about punishment and justice. It's like biting through means, our aim is to bring things back to normal, to make things fine, So, if you open your mouth and you close your mouth, you want to be able to close it properly without anything getting in the way. But what if there is something in the way, like a rock or whatever, that prevents us closing our mouth? And that can be a problem, can't it? And so biting through means there is something just preventing us getting everything together. The order around us that is so important, or should be so important, it's not complete because something is causing a problem. And biting through means we've got to deal with the problem. that means finding out who the troublemaker is. Now, the troublemaker might, of course, be something in our own head. It may be something we're doing wrong. It could be an object. It could be some aspect of our life that is, it's just causing us problems, and we need to accept that it's causing us problems, and we need to get rid of it, or we need to change it. One view of biting through would be someone who is causing us problems, and the suggestion is that this person who's causing us problems may not be a problem through and through, but they need to change in some way, and that's why this hexagram is perhaps connected with punishment. The aim of punishment here is not to act as a deterrence. It's to act as an agent of change. You point something out and you say, you've got to get yourself together, get rid of this bad habit and stop doing that, and then everything is fine, and things can be brought together. So that's what we've got to consider. Whether it's self-discipline, whether it's disciplining other people, whether it's just removing some object that is just preventing us getting our act together, that is something we've got to do. But there is a moving line here. This fifth line moves here. The fifth line from the bottom moves. So that that indicates that we have to be a bit careful. The problem is that if you bite through too hard, you might break a tooth. So we certainly don't want to be too vigorous in trying to get rid of problem people, problem situations. One needs to be a bit careful. One needs to observe the situation and work out how best to proceed. And then things will be fine. Now, this hexagram, biting through, does change because we have a moving line, and it changes to hexagram 25, innocence. So when we have sorted everything out, when we have found the problem, we've got rid of it, what we're probably thinking is that having sorted something out, we'd expect a result. I mean, there's no point in sorting things out just for the sake of it. We expect things to get better, and we're probably waiting for things to get better. And innocence is telling us how we should wait. It's often the case, isn't it, that when we're really waiting for something, when we're waiting for some good news, if we keep waiting, keep thinking, when is it going to come? It just doesn't happen. We just have to be relaxed about it. And innocence is about having no expectations, because having an expectation is not innocent. Just being innocent, just being open-minded, being open to anything, just having that kind of freedom. Because if you have that kind of freedom, you're allowing the space for, if you like, the magic to work. So perhaps as we move towards the end of the day, once we've sorted out whatever we have to sort out, and we're waiting for the things to work in our favor, we should just need to forget about it. Just forget that that's what we're doing. Just wait for it to happen, and then I think it, will. And when it does happen, it might be a bit of a shock, because I think that is part of this hexagram. There is a bit of a shock there, but it can happen. It can go our way, but we have to be open-minded. We can't have particular views about the way things are going to happen. We can't do that, because if we have a view about the way the universe is going to work, then the universe is not going to work. At least it's not going to work in a way that we like. Okay, so that's the I Ching. Doesn't look too bad, provided we do what's expected of us. Yes, there is something that needs to be dealt with, needs to be reformed. Um, Punishment, when I say punishment, I don't mean literal punishment, I don't think. It's just changing the people around us. If objects, if there's something getting in our way, just removing it, and then just being in terms of getting the benefits from our actions. We just got to be innocent about it and not have specific expectations. Okay, so let's now move back to the astrology and start to think about Donald Trump. This is just a quick update, see if anything's been happening recently. I try to do updates on him, every month, 6 weeks. I mean, you might be saying, well, why Donald Trump? Why should I be so concerned about Donald Trump? Well, Donald Trump's an important person. Like it or not, there is a good chance that just over a year, he's going to be president again. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there's a good chance that it is going to happen. He's an important man, whatever you think about him. So I think he is someone we really do need to keep tabs on. One thing that one thing about Trump, here's his chart, that I've discussed with some commenters, people who comment on this site. They say, "Oh, he's definitely got Leo rising." Now, as far as I'm concerned, he's got Leo rising. He just looks as if he's got Leo rising. He's got that mane of hair, and the whole way he comes over would suggest Leo rising. But if we take the time he's been given, 10:54 a.m., his ascendant is 29:58 Leo, and that means that if he had been born 10 seconds later, the ascendant would be in Virgo. In other words, we don't really know what his ascendant is in a sort of a mechanical sense. We only know he's a Leo rising because we think it fits him better. And I'm sure you could come up with arguments to say that he might be Virgo rising. I think Donald Trump once described himself as a germaphobe. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now, he describes himself as a germaphobe. There's nothing in Virgo in his horoscope, but he might have Virgo rising. So, we should consider that. Also, because he's got Mars in Leo, Mars rising in Leo, even if he's got a Virgo ascendant, he still has Mars rising. So that Mars in Leo might fool us into thinking that he's got Leo rising. So it is a problem with Trump, and I do use the 10:54 exact 10:54 a.m. chart. I do assume he has Leo rising, but to be honest, we do not know for sure. Whatever you say, you might say, "Oh, he's definitely got Leo rising, definitely," but we don't know. We absolutely do not know. So the reason I'm talking so much about his ascendant is because of what's happening in terms of Saturn. So let me just show you what I mean. So here's the inner wheel. Here's Donald Trump's chart, and here on the outer wheel are the positions of the planets right now, pretty much. So if you've been watching my videos recently, you'll know that I made a big thing about Saturn going direct. So a few days ago, Saturn went stationary direct at 0 degrees 32 Pisces. So it's been going backwards through Pisces, and then it came to a halt. I think it was on November the 4th, and now it's starting to go forward again, but really very, very slowly. And so we can see that in terms of Trump's chart, there's Saturn going stationary direct, 0 degrees 32 Pisces. Now, assuming he really was born at 10:54 a.m. dead, then he'd have his descendant at 29:58 Aquarius. So Saturn has gone stationary direct right on his descendant. And you know, if he had Virgo rising, it would be even closer. This is okay, different sign, but only 34 arc minutes out, but could be closer than that. So in astrology, traditionally the seventh house represents our open enemies. It can also represent lawsuits, the opponent, and it really is one's enemies coming out of a woodwork, and I think it is really appropriate that Saturn is stationary direct at the time when Trump is in court yet again. But he's had Saturn, ever since Saturn moved into Pisces, which I think was, off the top of my head, I think it was in the spring, early spring, was it in March? Something like that. The lawsuits, they've just kept on coming, haven't they? Whether it's in Georgia, New York, it's a federal, I think, all sorts of stuff going on. And it just keeps on coming, and this has all started to happen when Saturn's gone into Pisces, when Saturn has hit his seventh house cusp. So Saturn stationing is really bringing it all home. This is a moment where he's having to confront the issue that he really is at the center of a legal storm, with his enemies doing everything they can to get him. So as far as other transits are concerned, you can see that at the moment, if you look at, say, Mercury right now, well, indeed in a couple of days' time, but Mercury today is at 27:38 Scorpio, so that would be just past the square of Mars. So and moving to a square of his ascendant. So Mercury hitting his Mars, hitting his ascendant. This is a time where Donald outwardly probably saying a load of stuff. Inwardly, Donald's a Gemini. His mind is just constantly whirling round and round and round and round. You can imagine with transiting Mercury square his Mars, what's going on in his head. I know that, even when he was president, he would just get really obsessed about what someone was saying on social media or on TV, and he'd have, when he had his Twitter account, he'd tweet this, that, and the other. We know he does that anyway, but Mercury square Mars, his mind is moving very fast at the moment. It must be quite stressful for him. So that's one thing going on. He's got his transiting North Node. The transiting North Node is at 24 Libra, and it's square his Venus-Saturn midpoint. I think that with North Node square his Venus-Saturn midpoint, I think that he does have to be careful with some of the relationships he's involved in. He needs to make a special effort not to fall out with people right now. I think probably particularly women. I think he needs to pay attention to his own relationships, how he's getting on with Melania, particularly also as Uranus. You see, Uranus here is where's Uranus? Transit Uranus is at 2116 Taurus, and it is where's his moon? It's making a quincunx, an 150-degree aspect to his moon. Okay, that could also represent difficult relationships with women. Quincunxes are not particularly useful, good. They're not particularly good aspects. It also may suggest, something about his emotional turmoil. I think he needs to be quite disciplined here. With, moon in Sagittarius really likes to sort of express itself. When you see Donald communicate, I don't think that's his Mercury. I think that's his moon. I think it's his moon in Sagittarius, and so with Uranus making that quincunx, I think he has to be really careful what he says. Because I know he says a lot, but there's perhaps a danger that he says the wrong thing, and I think that could be a problem. And then there is okay. Now I want to look at his lunar return. Now, lunar return is when the moon returns to where it was when you were born, and lunar returns happen every month. So they are quite a short-lived thing, a lunar return, unlike a solar return. But I just quickly wanted to look at his lunar return. This is his lunar return for November the 15th. So this is his lunar return, which isn't actually, it's not operational yet. So it doesn't come into being until for another week. But it looks like quite a powerful lunar return. You can see that he's got there's a Sun-Mars conjunction at the time of that lunar return. In fact, it's a pretty close it's a pretty close conjunction, and this Sun-Mars conjunction, it's close to the midheaven, and it's opposition Uranus, which is on the IC. So, with this lunar return coming up in a week's time, on the plus side, it's certainly a time for him to get attention, to really push himself even more on the political scene, reach out to his followers, say as much as possible. That's a good time to be doing that. But Uranus on the IC could be quite destabilizing, and I'm just getting a sense that Trump needs to be really careful now how he communicates and how he gets his message across. I know that usually he can say anything and somehow turn it round in his favor, but I do think he's careful. I just think he needs to be careful. And I've said this before, but I think he needs some advice. He needs someone to just guide him in the right direction. Because he could say the wrong thing. And I know it's really difficult for him to say the wrong thing, but because it always seems to work out. But I think he does have to be careful. And particularly with this lunar return, we've got the node axis, north node in Aries, south node in Libra, square the ascendant. South node in astrology can be connected with reputation. I mean, as in bad reputation. So that's another thing he needs to watch for. But that's that's a lunar return. Then there is his solar arc direction. So solar arc directions, I use these quite a lot, when talking about people in these videos. Solar arc direction is when you move all the planets 1 degree for every year of life. So Donald is 77, so you would move every planet in his horoscope 77 degrees. And so that's his solar arc directed chart. And then we look at how it's affecting him. So there's Donald's chart in the middle, and there are his solar arc directions. And I think there are some quite important solar arc directions there. So look at Mercury. His solar arc directed Mercury, there it is. So his natal Mercury is 8 degrees 52 Cancer. So if we move that Mercury forward around 77 degrees, that takes it to 22 Virgo. And so that 2256 Virgo, so that Mercury at 2256 Virgo is exactly square his Sun, which is at 2256 Gemini. So if you've got solar arc directed Mercury square your Sun, in his case particularly, the words are just going to keep coming out. And I'm, it's a square. I'm not entirely convinced that it's going to be particularly useful. And and it's not just square his Sun. Mercury has already so by solar arc has squared his Moon. I mean, that would have been exact a couple of years ago, but it's the fact that he's got the Moon and the Sun. Because he was born on a full moon. Born on a full moon eclipse, actually. And so Mercury squaring his Sun. Again, he just has to be careful what he says. And I think what's happening is that the Democrat-controlled legal system is, of course, that's the problem about America, isn't it? I mean, you have all these elected, attorney general, all this kind of stuff. It's so, the legal system and the political system are so entwined with each other. That you have this danger of some kind of a witch hunt against someone like Donald, who the Democrats want to bring down. But he's been threatened with legal action for the things he says, this Mercury square Sun, that shows the kind of pressure he's under and how he's going to respond to it. I mean, he's probably going to ignore it. He can't help himself because he has to speak, and he might say that it's his First Amendment and all this kind of stuff. But I do think he does have to be careful. But whatever, he certainly feels the temptation to just, as always, to talk his head off. Another thing going on is Pluto. Here is solar arc directed Pluto. Where's solar arc directed Pluto gone? Is here at 24/7 Libra. Is starting to, it's pretty close to his Venus Saturn midpoint. So it's got Pluto on the Venus Saturn midpoint. We've already seen that he's got transiting North Node on his Venus Saturn midpoint, and he'd be at a time when he's got solar arc directed Pluto on his Venus Saturn midpoint. So again, his relationships with women may be important, and he has to be careful there. Venus Saturn, I suppose, isn't just about women, relations with women. It could also be about money, because Venus is about money. Venus, and Venus Saturn conjunction may be a person with, with financial issues, and this New York civil suit is, suggesting that he has overvalued his property portfolio. And of course, if you're Trump, your property portfolio is everything, and how he's valued what his place in Florida at Mar-a-Lago, really important to him. And does he really want the world to see, perhaps, that his portfolio of property is not as valuable as he was claiming? Venus Saturn is probably not very happy not very happy about that. Another thing relating to Venus Saturn, Venus Saturn is directed. You can direct Venus. There's directed Venus, directed Saturn. So the directed Venus Saturn midpoint is square his Mercury. So we're seeing Mercury come up again. Venus Saturn hitting his Mercury. This may be about the money. That's someone who's taken money so seriously in his life. He does. Money is so important to Donald, and I think that's because he doesn't have any planets. He doesn't have any planets in Earth signs. It's a compensation thing. But I think that directed Venus Saturn is hitting his Mercury could be just affecting the way he thinks. He does not want to see. He doesn't want the world to see that or think that his property portfolio is just not as valuable as he says it is. Of course, I don't know what it's worth. I don't know whether the New York establishment and whatever, those bringing him to court have got it right. I don't know. So those are his solar arc directions. I now wanted to look at the horoscope of the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, because I want to compare it to Donald's chart. So here's Letitia James's chart. So she was born October the 18th, 1958. I don't have a time of birth. I didn't look for a time of birth. I just assume we don't have a time of birth, so I didn't make any great effort to find her time of birth. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I was just being lazy and it was available. She's a Libran, and she's got the moon in Capricorn. So you might say that someone with a moon in Capricorn, there's a lot of self-interest there. Maybe that's a problem if you're an attorney general with moon in Capricorn. You will be acting in your own interests. Moon in Capricorn, in the interest of you and your backers, and so that's how. So that might be how moon in Capricorn is working. She perhaps sees an advantage for herself. That's moon in Capricorn. She sees an advantage there. So perhaps that's why she's making so much of an effort to go after Donald. I know she's 65 years old, but maybe she still sees that there are things beyond being Attorney General of New York. That's a pretty elevated position, being Attorney General of the state of New York, but maybe she sees this as being able to push herself even further up the political ladder. What else? Yeah, she's got Mars-Pluto square. That's Mars-Pluto square. She's decided she wants to go for Donald. And Mars-Pluto square, once Mars-Pluto decides on a course of action, Mars-Pluto will just keep going. So that's very tough, that Mars-Pluto square. So that's her chart. I'm not going into great detail about her chart, because what I really want to do is look at how her chart links with Donald. Is she the kind of person that can bring Donald down? So let's have a look at the two charts in terms of the inner wheel, outer wheel. So Letitia James's Saturn is at 2129 Sagittarius. Trump's moon is at 2112 Sagittarius. His sun is at 2256 Sagittarius. So her Saturn is hitting his full moon. That suggests to me that she really is creating problems for him. She was perhaps placed on the planet. or at least part of her role for being placed on the planet was to attack Donald Trump. And her Saturn is certainly able to do this. She has the capacity to make his life miserable with that Saturn hitting his full moon. But it kind of works both ways, because if you look at it, Trump's Saturn is at 23 Cancer. Her Saturn is at 24. Sorry, her Sun is at 24 Libra. So Trump's Saturn is square her Sun. So there is a fight back there. There's something about him that can undermine her. They can actually undermine each other. So I think it was it Arroyo described this as a double whammy. He wrote it didn't. I think Arroyo wrote a book about synastry, and I think he talked about this double whammy aspect. When you've got her, so her Saturn is opposition his Sun. His Saturn is square her Sun, and that's hence the double whammy. So with a double whammy, it may be that these two people can bring each other down. It may be in the end that for Letitia James, there is no honour in this. She may think that by doing this, it's going to help her politically, but maybe it's not. Maybe they can damage each other politically. So maybe we're dealing with two losers all round. I don't know. But on the other hand, we're talking about Donald, and he's able to turn things around very quickly. And as I said, is any news bad news? This case is making, is keeping him in the public mind. I still don't get the Democrats. I said this before, and people have. I had commenters saying about this that you've got to let the law take its course. That you can't make exceptions for people. But really, if the Democrats had just ignored him, if they hadn't pursued him through the courts, yes, you've noticed I am kind of thinking that these all these cases there is a political motivation. I can't believe there is not a political motivation here. This is not just objective law taking its course, but if Donald had just been ignored, and all the Capitol Hill stuff, all of that had just been ignored, he would have just faded into oblivion. That's normally what happens to past presidents. People forget about them. Okay, they try to exert an influence sometimes, like Obama maybe, but generally they just fade away, and that's what would have happened to Donald. But the Democrats couldn't help themselves, could they? I mean, I think that there's a sort of a Scorpio element to the Democrats. I mean, Hillary still hasn't forgiven him for winning in 2016. Biden is a Scorpio, so maybe they just can't let go, and that's a kind of that's a real problem there. Okay, I want to finish briefly. I want to briefly look at Trump's Vedic chart. His Vedic chart. Okay, here we go. Okay, so a couple of points about his Vedic chart. So in Indian astrology, life gets divided up into nine periods of life. Moon, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, North Node and South Node. Nine, and they have varying lengths. And in November 14th, 2016, Trump entered his Jupiter Dasha, and that ends in 2032. So He's going to be pretty old in 2032. So the Jupiter Dasha lasts for 16 years. And we know that the beginning of his Jupiter Dasha pretty much was when he won the 2016 election. I mean, November the 14th was, that was what? Pretty much not much more than a week after he won. After he won the election. So you might say that the next 16 years is going to follow suit. It's going to be him, okay, maybe not as president, but him really having a big influence on American politics. You could say that. Because, this whole 16-year period from 2016 to 2032 has a common theme. And that theme may be just Donald dominating what's going on politically in the US. Although I understand that by 2032 he's going to be, well, how old is he going to be? He's going to be mid to late 80s by 2032. But still, we do need to bear that in mind. That's the first point. So we then have sub-periods within this, 9 sub-periods you can see, and the sub-period he's in now, which actually started in October 22nd, 2023, and runs through until until September 27th, 2024, i.e. runs through until just before the election. He is in his Jupiter major period, but his Ketu his Ketu sub-period. And Ketu is the tail of the dragon. And Ketu is, he's got Ketu in his 4th house in his Vedic chart. This is a period of incredible instability. Things moving from this way to that way, and it's going to be chaos. And he's started in this period, so he's we've started to see this chaos unfold, and it's just going to be more of the same until September. So that's what we're going to see. Is it going to be good or bad? I mean, I think if it was anyone else, you'd think, well, it's going to be bad, and I'm not saying it will be bad, but it reinforces what I was saying, that Trump now needs a sense of discipline. He needs to he needs to organize himself more. He can't just say what he wants. I mean, I think we've seen this from his Western chart. Just because he's got away with it in the past doesn't mean he's going to get away with it now. And I just think he has to be careful there. So what I was particularly interested in was what happens in September 2020, in September 2024. September 24, he moves into he moves into his Venus subdasha. And I think there's a big question about, is this going to work out? See, his Venus in his Vedic chart is in the 12th house, and it's conjunct Saturn. On the face of it, that's not good, having Venus conjunct Saturn. In the 12th house as well. I mean, the 12th house is in Indian astrology is an unfortunate house. So that doesn't look good. On the other hand, with Vedic astrology, it can be very accurate, but Vedic astrology has this incredible capacity to encourage us, to make us make huge mistakes. The kind of mistakes you don't make with Western astrology. With Vedic astrology, you can get things 180 degrees wrong. So one has to be very careful. And so what I'm doing is I'm just pointing this out that, there are two sides to the coin. Venus is ruler of his 10th house. So the ruler of his 10th house, maybe Venus is going to be fortunate. Also, that Venus-Saturn conjunction is Vargotama, which means that when it's Vargotama, it means it's in the same sign as in the main chart as in the Navamsha chart. So this little chart here is the Navamsha chart. Okay, it's normally associated with marriage and the marriage partner, and you can see Venus and Saturn conjunction in the fourth, but he's got a Venus conjunction, four means Cancer. Venus-Saturn conjunction in Cancer in the Navamsha, Venus-Saturn conjunction in Cancer in his main chart. And it may be that that makes a critical difference, and it may be that after that this Venus-Saturn conjunction, which on the surface looks difficult, may actually work in his favor. One should also say that in terms of Shadbala, the Hindu method of evaluating strength, Venus is quite strong. Venus is not a weak planet. His Saturn is incredibly weak by Shadbala, by the way. It's far and away the weakest planet in his chart, which, I mean, I suppose if you want to use a Western psychological view, that makes sense. This is a man who doesn't have much discipline. Okay, so those are a few thoughts. About his Vedic chart. I think that's all I'm going to say about Donald in this update. I'm just trying to be neutral here. I know that people watching this, some people are going to absolutely hate Donald, and if I say anything nice about him, I'll get criticized. There are other people, who love him, and if I say anything negative, I might also get criticized. But I'm trying to be balanced. I have my own views about him, which are actually quite complicated. I mean, my own views about Donald, well, as I keep saying, from a foreign policy point of view, he's a safer president than Biden. In terms of domestic policy, maybe, I don't know, not so good. But I have mixed feelings about Trump. Okay, so anyway, that's all I'm going to say. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.